Yeah. So, as we were saying, there is a very visceral fear that I experienced while watching this movie. I already actively fear the ocean and the millions of things that live in it that we don't know about. But this really elevated that fear to a new level. So, thanks, movie. I have seen things I can never unsee. There are two mistakes I made going into this film: one, eating during it; two, keeping my eyes open during parts that I wish my eyes were closed during. This film hit a bit harder knowing that we are in the middle of a pandemic that never seems like it's going to end, and especially believable considering how mind-numbingly frustrating humanity as a whole has been through this entire experience. Like, in the movie, we get to see the CDC, and it's like, yeah, no, I get it. They're tired.
Checks out.
Yeah, no one's listened to them this entire time. They got tired a little too quick in this movie for me. Just because, like, it happened in the span of 24 hours. You can't already be exhausted.
Yeah, they were like immediately over it.
Yeah, like, and that was rude considering that they were like the only stance of like support that this poor doctor had. But the more I learn about this film, the more horrified I am by the state of the planet, by water as a whole. The state of the literal Chesapeake Bay, which is dying actively all the time, and the level of worry I now fear from anyone who has ever mentioned to me. I just know that I've heard people say that they've gone to Maryland specifically to eat crabs. And now I'm like, that wasn't something I was going to go do, but is absolutely never something I will ever do ever after seeing this movie. Are those crabs filled with isopods that will eat you from the inside out? Probably not. And no, arguably. But they are filled with pollution and runoff and like other things I'd rather not intentionally put into my body. Also, I'll say, after trying to understand the math associated with this, it is just very much clear I am not a scientist. I actively give you the warning that I'm not one, but some of this was like very hard for me to understand because of the way the numbers were, but I think I got it right. And if you're good at math and good at numbers and science, I provide all of the source material that you can look at yourself and come to your own conclusions, but they also do explain essentially what the numbers mean. So apparently the dead zone referenced in this film is very real. While it is not known for creating deadly flesh-eating isopods, it does show how unclean and unsafe the water is and does produce flesh-eating bacteria. I would love to say that since the movie released in 2012 that the dead zone got better, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to have gotten any better from what I can tell. To give some further context about what the dead zone is, the ChesapeakeBay.net has some answers in an article titled "Experts Find an Average Chesapeake Bay Dead Zone for 2021" by Rachel Felver. They offer some perspective on the current state of the bay. The dead zone is an area of little to no oxygen that forms in bay waters when excess nitrogen and phosphorus, otherwise referred to as nutrients, enter the water through polluted runoff and feed naturally occurring algae. This causes algae to bloom and grow and then eventually die off and decompose. When they decompose, the process removes oxygen from the surrounding waters faster than it can be replenished. This creates low oxygen or hypoxic conditions at the bottom of the bay. Plant and animal life are often unable to survive in this environment, which is why the area is referred to as a dead zone. The article goes on to highlight how this dead zone is impacting the Chesapeake Bay and how rapidly it's doing so. This is where it got like especially for me. Since the runoff pollution is heavily based on rainfall and what pollutants exist in the Bay Area, the human factor that we can control is the level of pollutants that are nearby and how they get outside to run with rainfall into the bay. According to the U.S. Geological Survey that tested an overall average watershed pollution between October 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2021, even though the rainfall and river flows decreased, the pollution levels were higher than normal. The survey stated that the bay was seeing flows entering around 84,880 cubic feet per second. To put that into perspective, an average size bathtub holds approximately 5.6 cubic feet of water, or 42 gallons. That's the equivalent of 15,118 bathtubs being emptied into the bay every second.
Every second.
Pollution, that much, every second. On the same website, but on their page exclusively dedicated to the dead zone, they provide information on the annual dead zone report card that the Virginia Institute of Marine Science conducts. In the report card, they announced that the 2021 Chesapeake Bay dead zone recorded in the past 36 years. Oh, wait, I just skipped ahead. In the report card, they announced that in the 2021 Chesapeake Bay dead zone covered an average of 1.5 cubic miles during the summer, which is slightly larger than most recorded in the past 36 years. Specifically, it is 67% of the bay. This dead zone lasted 46 days longer than in 2020, with 141 days of dead zone. The duration of the 2021 dead zone was 89% longer than those recorded over the past 36 years.
Whew.
So why happen? Why is this happening? What's going on? Experts say that the reports believe several factors influence this, including more rain, hotter temperatures, and calmer winds through the late summer of 2021. Over the long-term global warming will continue to impact this dead zone, though. But there are things that you can do to decrease the size of the dead zone just by limiting the amount of pollutants we use. The states that impact the Chesapeake Bay watershed pollution are Delaware, Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and the District of Columbia. So the ghouls live in one of these places. The page lists ways you can help if you live in these areas that are applicable to any area, honestly, for any and all water sources around the world. Just kind of like best practices for things you could do to help the planet that impact you kind of minimally. While you may not be able to control the weather, there are actions you can take to control the amount of nutrient pollution entering the bay and to help slow the rise of climate change. Consider reducing the amount of pollution that can run off your property by installing a rain garden or rain barrel to capture and absorb rainfall. Usually boiling water to kill weeds and other pests rather than chemical pesticides in your garden or yard is another option. They offer more tips. It was like a long list for helping the environment on their website, specifically the chesapeakebay.net/action/how-to tips. If you're wondering, why does this matter? My first question is, how'd you find our show? It's kind of our whole shtick that things matter. It's like our whole spiel. But that aside, there are many reasons that as a living creature on this planet, you should care what's happening to the water. And if this doesn't convince you, you might have to soon, because there's not going to be any good water left. But there are many reasons this should matter to you, whether you live near the bay or not. Human, which I assume you are if you're a human, as you can't live without drinking water for more than 3 days. With that, in fact, drinking unclean water can give you illnesses that can kill you as well. It is probably important that if you want to drink water and survive for the rest of time, that you should care about this. And honestly, this is this film does a very it's very serious, but also a little comical in how it is. An example of water and nature fighting back. This actually does happen, though. It's not just something we see in The Happening by M. Night. The trees and the water actually do fight back. It's called bacteria and science and evolution, and they work together to get stronger and more deadly for people. So specifically, the way in which the water can fight back is Vibrio valnificus. And what is that? It's flesh-eating bacteria that enters into open wounds, cuts, and abrasions, as well as through food. So you drink the water, you can get this. You eat food things that were in the water are now out of the water and you're consuming them. You can get it from that. You can literally enter the water for recreational purposes and have cuts on your hands. As someone who owns cats, I actively at all moments have cuts on my hands. So if I went into the water, I could get this thing. And it's specifically flesh-eating bacteria that lives and naturally occurs in the bay, but is being essentially exacerbated from global warming and the rise in temperatures. So Vibrio or waterborne illnesses can be transmitted through consumption of contaminated shellfish and seafood as well. According to the National Center of Coastal Ocean Science, NOAA for short, as recently as June 21, they predicted the occurrence of the pathogenic Vibrio vulnificus bacteria in the Chesapeake Bay. So flesh-eating bacteria in the Chesapeake Bay as recently as 2021 and is apparently a yearly occurrence. So we'll see that again this upcoming summer. Apparently this is somewhat natural. It's something that happens during the warmer months, specifically when water becomes warmer. Logic would indicate that the increasing global temperature for long periods of time caused by global warming would in fact increase the frequency of Vibrio vulnificus, or instead of saying the word, I'm going to say flesh-eating bacteria just because it's easier. The Chesapeake Bay program at chesapeakebay.net again provides some useful information on this subject in their page titled 5 Facts About Vibrio, they confirm what my theory was, that global warming will increase the occurrence of Vibrio illnesses in skin infections. While flesh-eating bacteria occurs naturally in the Chesapeake Bay, the increase in recent years is a direct result of climate change and pollution. As the bay temperatures rise and nutrient pollution from urban stormwater, agricultural runoff, sewage, and animal waste continues to increase, algal blooms, or like algae, become more frequent. The sea levels continue to rise. Coastal bodies of brackish and saltwater are beginning to spill into freshwater streams across the country. Because Vibrio thrives in areas of high salinity, their habitat is likely to grow in size in years to come, causing people who live further inland to also be at risk for infection. So where I said before, like, hey, if you don't care about it now, because you don't live near the water, you're gonna have to soon, because the hotter the planet gets, the more likely that this specific kind of bacteria will spread inland. The article provides some advice to avoid infection that isn't even like taking better care of the planet. It's literally like, this is the stuff you can do right now to protect yourself from these things. So it basically outlines that the following things you can do to avoid infection are, after it rains, wait 48 hours after rainfall before going into a body of water. Specifically, it's referencing the bay, but anywhere that has salt water in the vicinity of it, I think that's a good rule to follow to avoid that bacteria. Because within that 48 hours past rainfall, the pollutants have been flushed into the water and are just kind of sitting there waiting for you to infect yourself. After that, you can also avoid this through making sure your body is free of cuts, wearing gloves if you choose to enter the water with cuts, or a waterproof bandage, as well as if you're going to interact with uncooked or undercooked shellfish, that you wear gloves for that as well. It also recommends keeping hand sanitizer and antibiotic ointment on hand to treat wounds immediately after you get them, to avoid infection. And this would also help in the instance of if you had gone into the water to kill infection at the source. Ultimately, moral of the story is we need to treat our planet better, guys, and take steps to dismantle the systems that negatively impact the planet. I think a clear indicator of why we have been in this situation more recently is, if you remember our last presidency, there was a lot of deregulation for companies to dump things into the water, into like deregulation of environmental protections. So it makes sense that things would get worse kind of rapidly. But there are things that you can do that are both big and small to help take care of the planet. And I have a little list for you. You can go as small as changing the products that you use to be more natural, not using pesticides, instead using boiling water, as the article said earlier, as well as, plant trees, garden, locally source your food, clean your neighborhood, collecting rainwater to reduce the amount of rain water that gets run off and empties into our water supply, as well as, just kind of like making sure you're not dumping things into the planet. Ultimately, if you want to do more, there's legislation that you can help. I don't have like specifics, but you can keep an eye on your local legislation to make sure that the places around you are not falling victim to these things. So if they're trying to build a pipeline, for example, if they're trying to pollute, like deregulate the requirements for companies who have to literally safely reduce, like remove waste, if you are actively aware of what's happening around you, you can better protect you and those around you. The government has proven time and time again to be extremely incompetent. We see this in the film, showing that the mayor that literally knew all of this stuff ahead of time and just didn't respond to the emails because it just wasn't important. So I think the biggest takeaway from that, and also in witnessing how this past year or so has gone, is recognizing that we are kind of alone in this. Like the government's not going to do it for us, so we have to take responsibility. So just being aware, as aware of possible as you can, to make sure that you're taking care of the planet and each other, is one of the biggest things you can do. And that's kind of my biggest advice. But I'll provide resources in our description, John, and in our blog, specifically like kind of help you navigate living a more eco-friendly life. I spent about like 30 minutes to like 3 hours investigating eco-friendly home stuff. So I have lots of resources available for you that may or may not be vetted. I don't know. We'll find out.
New obsessions.
Yeah, I was just like, how live planet but not hurt it?
Yeah.
How do? And the internet had answers. So there's just easy ones, like don't use chemicals to do things, like use different kinds of products to clean your clothes.
Yeah.
Like little tiny changes. Things. Yeah, exactly. But the biggest ones seem to be like collecting rainwater, like storing rainwater, which is good in the first place because if we have a water shortage, rainwater is clean enough most of the time for you to consume, and is good for gardening as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, my friend Deb, who has a beautiful large garden, collects rainwater, and then it goes through like her sprinkler system to water all her plants, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And she's also got solar panels and all kinds of cool things, and I'm like, this is the house that I want in my life. It's as eco-friendly as possible. And it's like there are little things that we can do, and then sadly there's a lot of things that larger companies could be doing, and it's really them. And we will talk about fracking, which I think is super important, especially since we do reside in Pennsylvania. But I think it's also interesting because this is Maryland, and that's like right there. My friend got married in Maryland, like, like just very recently. So, yeah, it's right there. We are contributing in some way just by not having made those changes.
Yeah, and I mean, also, fun fact: there are isopods. They do exist. They can replace a fish's tongue, and they're big and they're in the ocean. But they are likely not going to eat humans anytime soon, or ever potentially. Like they really didn't seem interested when I really expected, like in doing my research, I was like, I'm gonna find something horrible that I never want to know. I don't want to know. I did, but like not the thing I expected. I expected murderous isopods, and that's not what I found, which was refreshing. I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I mean, isopods are also really creepy. They have too many legs, and they're like, they look evil. Like their faces look like they're up to no good.
Yeah,
and they're just bugs. And they're not evil. Like they're just existing. But at the same time, you're like, I don't.
They're scary looking. You're not wrong. They are. It's definitely, but they're not going to eat your tongue for real. At least very unlikely. So, which is good. Congratulations, world. You got one. Yeah, and I will say, like, okay, the isopods are really scary, but I think even if they didn't use isopods, if they just use like regular flesh-eating bacteria that actually exists, like that would have been super scary too. Like I remember reading the one thing from the Baltimore Sun, and the lady was like, it kind of takes away, like, I think I see what they were trying to do, but did this actually like ignite a fire to like change stuff? And I was like, I see that, because like your first thing was isopods. I was also like, I don't want to research because I don't want to find out isopods are real. Yeah. I don't want to know. But like, it was very easy to find out all the horrible things that are actually happening there, specifically around like I am never going in water. I already didn't want to, but like it's just a natural occurrence, flesh eating bacteria. You go to the beach, now your skin's gone and you die. Like,
Yeah.
it's very upsetting to me.
Yeah.
And it's very real. It is just getting worse and worse as time goes on. So I'm just like, yeah, the fire has been lit for me. I was already very worried about the other bad things that were going to happen to the planet and the world. And now I'm like, oh, but also the planet, though, really, that's urgency.
Yeah.
Urgency.
Yeah. Super real.
I'm trying to think. There was also like a TikToker that I follow, and I can't remember their name right now. But it was just like a frustration with like essentially like Americans being like, oh, I don't know, it's so hopeless. I don't know what we can do. And it's like you don't get to say that. You're the ones who came here and did this.
Yeah.
You don't get to just be like, apocalypse. It's like, no, but you need to do things to help the planet because the planet's still here and it's your fault. So like get it together and do the stuff. Like it's not a haha joke time.
Yeah.
The apocalypse, it's happening. So don't just laugh, ha ha ha, sad now. You need to actually like locally source your food, reduce your waste products, boil water instead of spending money on pesticides. These are all like super simple things that you can do.
Yeah. It's also a matter of like having those things become more accessible too, right? Like locally sourcing your food. Not everyone has that ability or has local produce or
there's food deserts
co-ops.
and stuff too. Yeah.
So it's also like kind of petitioning for the acting powers to make those things accessible so that we can contribute to like the world getting better, because some of us just kind of have to keep living. But for those of you who can, like every little thing does help. Even like you're not going to make the same impact as if a company stops doing those things. But you're doing something, like even just doing like, meatless Mondays, right? Like that's already drastically changing if everyone did something like that. Or reducing like the waste or, in recycling, trying not to buy things that have lots of packaging. Like we do that. And I think it's super annoying when I'm like, I know I want that thing. I want the single package applesauce. But no, I'm going to have to get a jar of applesauce so that I'm not using so much waste from every single package of this little applesauce. But I'm like, it's tedious to have to scoop it out every time, and I hate it. But it's like, you kind of just have to like do your little part, and it might make you feel better. And it might make the world a little better for the, like when we leave it. It's still going to be here and it's going to look different and it's going to take a long time for it to be uninhabitable, but we're in a time where we're kind of at the end of our chance to make it
go the other way. Yeah.
Like we're running out of time to change that fate.
And just the fact that there are little things you can do. Like the one that really stood out to me is like, I know for a fact there are people who just like go buy pesticides and stuff where boiling water is just free. If you have electricity and gas, you can, or even if not, like you can make fire, make boiling water, go out on a summer day and leave a pot on the hot asphalt, let boil now. And you can get rid of weeds and stuff that way. You know what I mean? Like there's like, that one really stood out to me and was like, I could do that now without changing anything else. Could do that now. Not that I'm spraying. I don't have money for pesticides, but like still, if I have weeds that I wish to remove, that's something I could do instead. And then also just like, there's just like awareness that needs to take place. The rainwater thing was something like I already planned to do eventually, but I was like, I could start doing that now just so, like as a preventative measure, even if I'm not going to use it for anything specific.
I want to start doing like composting and like those things so you're not wasteful with like, your food, because it's like I recycle a lot of packaging, but I don't. But even then, that's a whole video on itself. Is the fraud that is recycling, because things just have the recycling logo on it and then some random number, and it actually doesn't matter. Like if it's like only 1 and 2. If you see 1 and 2 on your recycling things, those are the only things that are recyclable. If it has a 5, that's a lie. You're not doing anything. It's bad.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other field of things to like discuss on how we do it. But I think it's also, as people, we need to realize that we're not in these little isolated pods. We're not in our own isopods of existence. The things we do have a bigger impact on the rest of the world and ultimately the other people around us. And so instead of being like the horrible, crabby governing people that were in this film who were like, whatever, a tiny town, care about your neighbors and try to do what you can.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, ultimately the world, it sucks. But having existential dread doesn't actually do anything productive except for make you sad.
Yeah.
So and it just, yeah, it doesn't change anything. So ultimately, just do what you can, do the best you can. And if
Mhm.
you did bad today, do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's all you can do.
Just keep
But
trying to one up yourself.
the biggest thing is you gotta do something though.
Yeah.
Because just being
First
like,
try.
that's not gonna do anything. The planet will continue to die. We're not procreating anyway, but like extra. No one
Yeah,
will
we're
be
definitely
able
not,
to,
yeah.
like, because the water
Children
is
of
gone.
men, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poison in our bodies intentionally through neglect is not good time. So there
Yeah.
are, and I mean, we'll put some like things you can do. I mean, it seems like a really big thing. Like you can't stop companies yourself, but if you're doing these things, it's gonna do something positive. Enough people do
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. And just speak up. And I think when we get to like our fracking and other episodes, we'll really explore what's happening, even in your own backyard, and how big companies are manipulating the facts and information so that you don't know or don't care.
Yeah, and I mean, you control yourself. That's all you can do. So control yourself.
Yeah,
Don't do the
exactly.
same.
Do something.
Do something.
Do something. So that was our episode on the Bay and talking about pollution and the crisis there and our water systems. And do your part. Check out our ways to help section and join us next week when we're talking about another eco horror film. And don't get married.
Yay. They'll eat your kids, or the isopods will, or the flesh eating bacteria, because you go to the Jersey Shore and then you die.
I would
Okay?
never. I will never set foot on a Jersey beach. You
You
can't
go to the
make
Jersey
me.
Shore, it's in the bay. It's the Bay
Refuse.
area. I'm never eating bay scallops again. I don't even know if it's from the same place,
Not
but
going to a
no.
beach in the Upper East Coast anyway.
Yeah,
Will
it's
not do
not
it.
safe. It's not, fish die. They can't live there. Why would you think children should go play there now? Just because for funsies? No.
The only time my
God.
snobby peninsula self will prevail is that I refuse.
Yeah,
For
it
the
sucks
people
that
up
like
here.
inland is just so like
Yeah.
all the areas there, you don't want to go there. But it's also like that's all that's gonna be here later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Florida's going to be gone. New Orleans, gone. Sorry. All right. Well,
We're gonna do stuff though. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna do it because we have to. We're here.
yeah.
That's your
We're
evening
queer.
news. So
That is.
hello. Goodbye.